Hi everyone, today we did get a pretty aggressive bounce here. You can see rallied up to that next level 680, didn't quite fill the gaps here, but pretty nice rally back above the 55 just for a moment, and then we sold into the close. Are we going to get a higher low here and a continuation on this bullish structure, or is this now a high, lower high in here? A couple of things to watch for, but let's take a look at all of the charts. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. In news today, we got the air traffic controller union president coming out and saying it'll take weeks to recover from the shutdown impacts. This is really the biggest thing that the shutdown is touching in the near term. This is kind of the straw that'll break the camel's back, in my opinion, because this is having real impacts on real people, and this is going to be felt, and then we'll see what happens to those who are voting for and against this shutdown. And even once this issue is resolved, like he said, it's going to take a while for this to be recovered. TSA wait lines have increased pretty dramatically, but the air traffic controllers, like I said, that is the biggest issue. This has gone on for the longest in history now at 36 days. And he mentions here they don't think they'll see what the damage is until the shutdown ends. So it's going to be an interesting one. Definitely some real impacts being felt, and this is the most important one in my opinion. Moving over to fear and greed index, we're still on extreme fear, up just 2 points on this metric. Momentum did step back to neutral. Interesting on that. Strength and breadth continue to decline there, so we'll look at those later. And then looking at put call ratio continues to elevate. It's not super high yet, but we had this low, higher low setup. We expected that bounce. Volatility did pull back here just a little bit for the VIX, and then safe haven demand still right around that 0 number, still extreme fear there. And then junk bond demand turning back down just a little bit, still extreme fear. So nearly every metric in extreme fear, except for momentum and your volatility. Moving over to seasonality, don't forget this is a bullish seasonal period, so even with the dips that we saw over the last couple days, the expectation is that this is going to move higher over the next couple days and really through the end of the month. Moving over to that earnings calendar, you can see McDonald's missing on the top and bottom lines, AAPL beating on both, ARM beating on the bottom line, missing on the top, DoorDash missing on earnings. They were doing really poorly today on the back of that earnings. And then for tomorrow, ConocoPhillips, Monster Beverage, AstraZeneca. Not a whole lot of companies left out there, but there are a couple that are worth watching. And then for the Friday, pretty much just Duke Energy and Constellation Energy. Moving over to the economic calendar, you can see that soft data was well above the 50 line for composite PMI and services PMI, so those numbers are not too bad. Non-manufacturing PMI also good there. Overall, not too bad on this data. And then for the Thursday, a lot of that stuff got taken off because of the government shutdown, so we're not going to get any of that data that we're looking for. And then for the Friday, just Michigan data pretty much, which consumers still seem to think there's a lot of inflation out there, just don't really see that happening quite yet. Moving over to the charts, like I mentioned, we had a pretty decent bounce here today back into the middle of this range, hit that 55, rejected from there, hit that 60, 80 resistance area, rejected from there. So not everything you would want to see, but it was nice to see just a little bit of a bounce. You can see it here on the daily. Hit that level, pulled back. Momentum is still bearish here. Need to see it really get above that and hold and start to push to a higher high if it's going to do it. But you can see most of the volume on the session coming through on that selling candle after hitting that key area. Not everything you'd want to see, right? Want to see a little bit more conviction to the upside. Closed in the middle of the candle. Want to see a close closer to the top of the candle if we're going to get that continuation. So right now, kind of just looks like an oversold bounce, getting a lower high setup potentially for a lower low to come. Next support to the downside is going to be that 672.37 level. Moving over to the charts here on the S&Ps, you can see we bounced off the midline there, hit that 8 EMA, and then rejected from there a little bit, 678.98. So we're kind of stuck between the two levels here, waiting to see if this gets a resumption to the bull side. I like the bounce here. Again, low, higher low potential. Certainly think this could absolutely resume to that upper band. But looking at the upper band here on the weekly chart, you can see that is currently sitting at 683.47, which gives you about a 1% potential move to that upper area before you find resistance again. So you can see resistance last week, could not close above it, pulled back, haven't hit that 8 EMA yet at 668.25, which could give you another potential for about $9 of falling from current price to that area, or about 1.5%, get a 1.5% pullback, touch that level, and then get the resumption back to the upside, the same way that we have been over the past several months. Moving over to the NASDAQ here, you can see same kind of setup. Dipped low, didn't quite hit the level I was looking for at 611.75. I thought we would dip to that area before we saw a retracement, but now this is a pretty textbook retracement, right? Breakdown here, retest of the trend structure, retest to the 55 EMA. Looks like a breakdown, retest, breakdown potential. 21 EMA in this key area here around 620. Want to see that hold if it's going to do it. And if we can get the breakout, then you're looking for this trend structure back up here. Extending that out would give you a target around 638, right back to your all-time high. So we'll see, kind of mixed signals, not as strong as I would have wanted to see, but definitely a better bounce. You can see that resistance hit that key level, pulled back, didn't quite hit the 21 on the NASDAQ. And then looking at the QQQ, that same trend line that we were watching, 21 EMA in that same area, VWAP in there as well, which is really the main reason I thought we would come down into this area, retest it, this previous high area, and then we would get the bounce from there, but didn't pull back as much, which I think you could argue is a little bit bullish. Moving over to the Tasty charts here, you can see that upper ATR band on the weekly chart. That's what we've been watching as kind of that upper limit. Right now that is 628.56. We'll see if we pull back to that 9 EMA here at 608.12, which again gives you a pretty good amount of downside potential before you see a substantial bounce. That would take us below that previous high area, below my kind of buy-in price here around 605, but that 8 EMA sitting there, 608.12. We want to see if we bounce in there. And then looking at that daily chart, of course, this is still very much bullish conditions after we got the breakout here on the 27th. Breakout, kind of retest of this previous area. Not as far down as it should have been, in my opinion. Wanted to see it retest this area, get a nice confirmation bounce and continuation. But as long as this holds in here, then you're looking for the upper band around 643 on the daily chart. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow. The Russell bounced as we suspected that it would. Came down, hit that 55 EMA, bounced right through that next level at 244.46, and it's holding in the after hours. Got a zone of resistance in here, 245 to 246 area. Consolidated EMAs, we're kind of in this consolidation of EMAs right now. Momentum stepping back to bullish. Still think we're in kind of sideways consolidation, still topping pattern kind of territory on the Russell until we see a clean break above these highs here. That's what you have to trade. And then looking at the Dow, bounced to that 9 EMA, 474.36. Same as kind of everything else, right? You got this kind of bull flag kind of set up here. It's in this zone. Is it going to break out and push to the trend line around 484, 485 area? Momentum still breaking down. RSI still below the SMA. Moving over to the Mag 7 here. Mag 7 did bounce just a little bit, close to 1%, not quite 1%. Momentum still bearish here. RSI still bearish. Still can't get anywhere near that level. 379.22 is the level. If we can get above that, back to bullish. If we're still below it, that it will eventually turn more bearish here, in my opinion. So same kind of setup really as the Russell. 55 EMA is your support, and this is your clear overhead resistance. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. Apple still hanging in there, basically unchanged on the day, still right at that 8 EMA hanging in there. This still looks pretty bullish to me with how well it is performing relatively to everything else. And then you can see Microsoft falling over 1% right to the level. 506.71 was the level. We closed at 507.16, so pretty much right on top of it here. This is clearly an important level for the stock. It's drifting below it after hours. If it drifts below it, that next zone of support, you got maybe some buyers in here around kind of 495 area, but then you got that 144 EMA down at 486.33. Again, kind of that same setup, right? Consolidation of EMAs, breaking back below all of those. You have this one kind of catching up. We'll get into this area. Look for the bounce, look for the buy off of that area. And then usually that second test, if you get it, is going to be a bigger breakdown. So right now, Microsoft looks like a bit of a sell here. Look for the bounce here, and then we'll see what happens after that. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA. Tesla bouncing once again back above that 450 level, bouncing about 4%, continues to look pretty good in here. Didn't hit my kind of breakout level yet, but really should have been watching at 450. Gapped up, rallied from there, looks really, really good. Think this is going to push. I've been saying it for a little bit here. It's been kind of choppy, but I think Tesla's going to go, and then you got NVIDIA falling another day here, back-to-back days down about 2% on each of those. Yesterday was closer to 4%. Now you got that 21 EMA in this next consolidation high around 190. Can it hold that area? That is kind of the bigger question. If it doesn't hold this, then you're looking for a push back down to this kind of 180 to 184 area. And then if that breaks, then you're looking for a much bigger breakdown. But for now, this is still bullish structure. You would expect that 21 to hold. Moving over to Meta and Alphabet. Meta here bouncing from that 630 99 level. It held that level on the gap up and retest. Is this finally a short-term low for Meta? Of course, this is not going to be a change in structure by any means. You still have a clear topping pattern. Broke this downtrend even more aggressively here, but this is interesting, right? If you want to risk off of that level, you got a pretty tight stop. Can you push back to this maybe 200 area around 678? Maybe in here around kind of 695 to 700 area? Wouldn't shock me, but there's definitely a ton of volume. I still think this is going to be a lower high of some capacity, and then we'll see this break down a little bit further. But for now, it does look like a bit of a bounce, and then Alphabet still really, really strong. 2.4% on the day, continues to be pretty much straight up and parabolic. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, same kind of setup here for staples. As kind of Meta, you have a level, 75.40, as long as this area holds. Momentum stepping to bullish, RSI oversold conditions. Looks like you could look for a short-term bounce here. And then discretionaries bouncing pretty aggressive, 1.22%. Right back to the trend line. It's fading just a little bit after hours. Still need to see this get above that 242 area. And then we'll see what happens after that. If we can get the breakout, of course, very, very bullish. If it continues to reject from here, ultimately we'll see these EMAs consolidate, and then if you get the breakdown after that, that is usually catastrophic. Moving over to breadth, 20 and 50 day breadth actually recovered here just a little bit today. You can see it bouncing from that 3660 level, pushed through that area, and then we hit the 21, hit 9. Momentum stepping to bullish, RSI stepping to bullish. Is this a short-term base here on breadth? I think that'll be interesting. And then looking at 50 day, same kind of setup. You have a level here, 39.96. Need to see it get above that and kind of push if it's going to do it. Got a little bit of a double bottom, momentum stepping to bullish. Maybe there's a small base in here for breadth. Moving over to the dollar, you can see the dollar through wicks to that 200 as we suspected that it would. Went a little bit higher briefly and then sold off, closing slightly bearish on the day. It's not quite closed yet, but hopefully it returns kind of to this level, 99.83, holds that level and then bounces, maybe even the trend line in here. A shallow pullback, much higher low setup, and a push through would be awesome. But either way, watching this very closely here on the dollar, that 200 could be a key area of resistance. We're also overbought, which is probably not helping. Moving over to bonds. Bonds did okay on J&K. TLT much, much lower on this session. J&K still holding that 96.51 level. Is this kind of a double bottom, looking for a little bit of a bounce here potentially, and then TLT breaking through that level, 89.16. Glad I took this off. I thought maybe we would see a little bit more of aggressive bounce in here, but got stopped out. This pulled back and continued to fall here. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. 200 SMA could be a key level, 87.74. If it holds that, then you could look for a bullish trade off of there, but at this point, this would be the next zone of support. Go ahead and put an alert there. If we can hold that area, that'll be super bullish, and then look for a bigger push to that next key level, kind of the 92.82 area. But for now, super bearish on momentum, super bearish on RSI, expecting this to fall a little bit more. Over to the volatility index, you can see that 9 EMA holding as a zone of support, 55 EMA holding as a zone of support in here between kind of 16 and 17. Held that higher low, didn't fall nearly as much as you would kind of expect it to if this was going to be kind of a continuation higher. So VIX still signaling there's some worry in markets, and I would be patient here, certainly not leveraged fully long. Moving over to my accounts, I recovered nicely with the bullish bounce here. I rolled out to 243 for tomorrow on the calls, paid a small debit for that. I took a little bit longer to roll than I probably should have, but either way, made a little bit of money on it, made a little bit more money on it, and then I might let these go tomorrow depending on how bullish the price action looks. I'm just a little concerned, right, that we have consolidation. We're going to get that EMA catch up, and then we're going to see the bigger breakdown, and then we're going to have to look for cheaper prices on the IWM. So being patient and definitely not holding this for the long term. These are very short-term trades. And then you can see Q's position. It's pretty much right in the middle here, not super worried about that. And then the dollar, still right on the cusp of being in profit. Watching that 200, I might take this off if we start to see that fall too aggressively. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of the situation with air traffic controllers. Is that going to be a problem? Will that be the issue that reopens the government, or are we going to be at a stalemate forever? Let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.